Do you want to come down a 40k terrain rabbit hole with me? Of course you do. GW created a huge buzz this week when it posted the first terrain layout map for 11th edition. But what can this tell us about what to expect from 11th? And does this layout favour melee or shooting, or is it balanced? Let's find out. While L-shaped ruins worked well for the tournament scene in 10th edition, the majority of 40k players are not competitive. They want thematic battlefields, and GW has finally listened. And I'm proud to say I played a little part in this. Back in January 2025, so over a year ago, this channel published a podcast called Take the L, Is GW Terrain Too Boring? I came up with that idea based on conversations with players in my local meta, and it turned out the video voiced what a lot of people were already thinking. This sparked wider discussions with other content creators pitching in, and that ultimately built into a movement. GW has listened, and 11th edition will see transformative change to the terrain rules. But how will this impact the game? I recently made a video highlighting my concerns that the rules changes they'd shared so far seem to favour melee armies much more than shooting factions. So today we're going to ask the question, do the new terrain layouts also favour melee? In addition, GW is asking tournament organisers to only use its official terrain packs for events. This is a big change as there are currently 2 other widely used packs across the world. WTC is primarily used in Europe and beyond, and UKTC is used primarily in the UK. So we'll also discuss the potential impact on those respective player bases, and let me know how you feel about the terrain changes in the comments. The single biggest impact for all players is that we'll need to buy more stuff. If you joined in 10th edition, you might not have the terrain that you need for 11th yet. Those of us who have been around for a few editions probably still have what we need stored away somewhere. I reckon I've got enough pipes and barricades to fill 4 tables, so it's going to be great to use them again. However, even if you're like me and you have the terrain, none of us have all the right terrain footprints for 11th as they've drastically changed. GW is launching an official set of footprints soon, and I expect third-party providers to also be offering them before 11th edition drops. If you're thinking you need to buy some more terrain, then I've got the perfect place for you. Loaded Dice is an award-winning gaming store. They've got a fantastic website, they ship all over the UK, and they do superb discounts. And you can also get an extra 5% off by using the code WARHAMMER5. I'll put a link to that in the description and a link in the pinned comment to the affiliate link so that you can use that because that really helps the channel. Now, to compare the new terrain layout that GW has showed us, we're going to look at Mission 1 from 3 terrain layouts in 10th edition. That's the GW layout, UKTC and WTC. We're going to check 3 metrics, which are terrain coverage, so how much of the board is covered by terrain footprints, firing lanes, what firing lanes are available, and staging, how easy is it to stage melee armies ahead of a charge. These aren't perfect, and you're going to see some of the most incredible Photoshop artwork you've ever seen in your life, but let me know in the comments if I've also made any mistakes. Have I miscalculated in my maths, or have I missed out any crucial firing lanes? Let us know in the comments. We'll start by comparing current GW terrain to what's coming in 11th edition. So looking at 10th edition Games Workshop's chapter approved Mission 1 layout, there are 16 pieces of terrain. So you've got your 6x4s, what looks like a 6x5, your 8x6s and your 12x6s. In total, that terrain covers 636 square inches. Now the board, a standard board at 60 by 44, is 2,640 inches. So the percentage covered is just over 24%. Looking at the 11th edition map they showed us, Crucible of Battle, again, there are 16 pieces of terrain. You've got your 7 by 11.5s, you've got your 2 triangles, which in this case are adding up to a square of roughly 8 by 11.5. You've got your 6 by 4s, and then you've got your barricade and pipe types, which is your 10 by 2.5s and your 6 by 2s. Now, in total, that equates to 608 square inches of coverage, which is just about 1% less than the 10th edition map. It's about 23% covered. Looking at firing lanes, we'll go back to the 10th edition GW map, Mission 1. And you can see the orange lines there. Those are 2 vertical edge-to-edge firing lanes along the short board edge. Now, it is worth noting, however, that most GW chapter approved layouts have 4 edge-to-edge firing lanes. This one only has 2, but most of them do have 4, where you can shoot right across the board. The yellow lines indicate the number of shorter firing lanes that we've got. There's a couple missing off there, but this is just to give you an idea. But you can see there's quite a lot of firing lanes there. Looking at the new map, 11th edition Crucible of Battle, you've got 2 edge-to-edge firing lanes across the length of the board, but then you've got 4 across the short edge. So we've gone from 4 to 6 edge-to-edge firing lanes. Then you've got quite a few more shorter ones in yellow again. Again, I haven't put all of these in, but this gives you a rough idea. So you can see here that there are considerably more longer firing lanes than on the 10th edition map, and probably about the same, roughly, on the shorts. Now, if you liked that artwork, just wait for the staging. We've got X's, blue X's here to mark where units start on the battlefield, and then blue arrows to indicate where they can go to stage behind the next piece of terrain. Now, the 10th edition GW layouts tend to have decent staging, but then there is a wide open kill zone in the middle of the table. As you can see, 11th edition has that large obscuring terrain in the centre of the battlefield, so there is much less of a fish in a barrel scenario, if you like. And there's also excellent staging from behind the barricades, but more on that later. So comparing the current GW maps to the new layout that they've showed us, you can see there is some changes. It is going to be a little bit more shooty than it has been, but there is still plenty of cover there and plenty of staging opportunities. However, where it really differentiates is the other 2 layouts, UKTC and WTC. As a Brit, I play on UKTC. This is Mission 1, and as you can see, there are 14 pieces of terrain, so we've got 2 fewer already. You've got your 8x8s, your 9x3s, your 5x5s, and then we have a medium L and a little L. And, as you might expect with fewer pieces, there is substantially lower coverage as well. The board coverage here is 441 inches, which is less than 17%. So that is about a 6% decrease compared to the 11th edition GW terrain layout. And again, as you would imagine, there are a lot of firing lanes. You've got, I think, 6 or 7 edge-to-edge firing lanes. You've got 4 through the board edges and 3 through the middle here. And there are just generally a lot more firing lanes, as you can see. It's a much more open board. Shooting is much more favoured in this. Back to the blue arrows, and you can see, though, even though it's open, staging from the deployment zone to the mid-board is pretty good. You're looking at 8 to 9 inches from your DZ ruins to your side objective safety. Just don't get caught in those no man's land firing lanes because you will get obliterated. Moving on to WTC terrain and layout Mission 1, there is only 12 pieces of terrain, so fewer again, but 10 of them are big. You've got loads of 12x6s covering that board, and then a couple of smaller 5x2.5s, which are basically your containers. And if we look at the total board coverage here, it is a whopping 745 square inches, which equates to over 28% board coverage. That means moving to the GW 11th edition layout would be roughly a 4% decrease in terrain footprint. In terms of firing lanes, you've got your big orange ones there again, your 2 edge-to-edge firing lanes down the short board edges, and then you've got a dozen or so little firing lanes. There's a couple more that I haven't put on there, but you can get the general idea. These boards are dense and they do not favour shooting. They do, therefore, favour staging, as you can see by this plethora of blue X's and arrows here. There are lots of opportunities. This is hammer and anvil, so you're deploying in the left-hand third here. But you can see you can move very easily from one terrain piece to the next, hop across, and then get into combat. What conclusions can we draw from all this? Well, UKTC players will face a very big challenge, and that's assuming that UKTC agrees to use GW terrain layouts for its events, which includes majors like the London GT. They would be going from quite open boards to much fewer long shooting lanes. WTC players face a similar upheaval but going the other way. Their boards would become a little less dense. Meanwhile, those already playing on GW layouts will still have to adjust, particularly if those mid-board kill zones are completely gone, as it looks like from this first layout that GW have shared. Then the big question, does the new layout favour melee armies? Well, fewer shooting lanes and good staging means it should favour melee lists. Couple this with the new remain hidden rules for hiding in the terrain, and a -1 ballistic skill when you're shooting at a unit in cover, and you can see why Tau players are starting to sweat. When you add the new charge rule on top of that, the odds are really starting to look stacked against factions that rely on shooting, like my beloved Necrons. But we do need to remember that these terrain features will not all be ruins. Back in 9th edition, we paid movement penalties for traversing over or through terrain features like barricades, pipelines, craters, forests, etc. If your movement is reduced by half going through a forest, or it costs 2 inches of movement to cross a barricade, that is going to impact how easy it is to stage anything that touches the ground. The big exception, therefore, is the fly keyword. In previous editions of 40k, units with fly have ignored movement penalties for crossing difficult ground or for going over barricades. In 9th edition, they face no penalties at all for flying up and over buildings and other big terrain features. If fly negates movement penalties in 11th edition, this will make certain units super strong. For example, Catan get even more interesting if they can glide through forests. In addition, it will also really help factions with wide access to fly, like Blood Angels. It's looking like jump packs will be worth their weight in gold. However, don't despair if you're an Orc or a World Eaters player. You can just pile your units into a party bus. At the Adepticon reveals, GW joked that Rhino Rush was coming back in 11th edition. Now, this was an older playstyle where you took melee units in transports and then yeeted them up the board. You can do this to some extent in 10th, but it is restricted because transports can't drive through ruins, but they might be able to drive over barricades or through other terrain features like woods. If this is the case, again, this really favours melee detachments, as they can move directly up the board and get in your face before you've whittled them down. And it will mean double bubble for the floaty boaty factions, those that have got flying transports like Dark Eldar and their vanilla cousins. Of course, the caveat to all of this is that word if. We've only seen one layout, but based on what we've seen so far, coupled with the rules we've also seen so far, both the terrain and the rules look like they're going to favour melee to me. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments. I'll look forward to reading everything that you say, and as usual, I'll try and reply to it all. All that's left to say is a huge thank you to my Patreons and YouTube channel members. Without you guys, I wouldn't be able to make these videos. Your help is sincerely appreciated. I'm very grateful for it. Thank you. And if you're not a member, but you love this type of content, please join. It costs as little as £3 per month, so it's not too much for you, but it all adds up for me and makes a big difference. There's a link in the description that tells you how to join. Speaking of joining, we also have a free Discord. I'll put a link to that in the comments.